Good afternoon and welcome to the Greenville Rotary. Well, it's been another week. Things are changing. Things seem to be getting back to normal a little bit more. We're all watching the Olympics again. Jimmy Fallon made the observation last year. Here's young people achieving their dreams, breaking records, and then going back and sleeping on a couple Amazon boxes. But a couple quick two serious pieces of news this morning. Simone Biles pulled out of competition, or at least the team finals at this point. She said she's not in the right mental place, so she's going to be assessed day by day. There was also some vandals attacked the National Origami Museum, and so we'll know about those as things unfold. And with that, you need a prayer. So if you would join me. Creator and sustainer of all that is and ever will be, accept our thanks for this day and all its blessings, with our friends beside us and no person beneath us, with the bonds of Rotary between us and our worries behind us, with our goals before us and no task beyond us, with a thirst for knowledge and a dream of a polio and pandemic-free world. Let us offer thanks for our food, blessings for one another, and let us be a source of hope for those in need and contentment for those who are lonely. Let us give gratitude for our opportunity to serve Rotary. Can I have an amen? Amen. And flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Kim?
All right. Welcome, everybody. I'm Kimberly Mudar. Glad everybody's here. Glad to see all the returning Rotary members. We've got a great numbers here today. I'm here to introduce our guests, our honored guests. We've got quite a few today. So when I call your name, please stand so everybody can see who you are. All right. Prosser Carnegie. Thank you, Prosser. He is a guest of Rance Bryant. There's Rance. Thank you. Camber Parker. Camber. Is that her back there? Okay. And you're a guest of Forrest Gentry. Is that Forrest? Thank you, Forrest. All right. Chris Fincher. Hey, Chris. Welcome. You're a guest of Bob Howard. Okay. Pat Sutton. Mr. Pat. Hey, Pat. Guest of Amy Randall. Okay. We have Jessica Compton. Jessica? Okay. Was that Laura, her invite? Okay. Put a reminder on her calendar, right? All right, we'll get her back. Jaden Beek. Jaden? There's Jaden. Welcome, Jaden. And a guest of the club. Okay. Jimmy Bonaparte. Welcome. Also a guest of the club. Good to have you. Caught him with his mouth full. And last but not least, Randy Redlinger. Randy? Hey, Randy. Welcome. Guest of a double here. Carolyn Stewart and Mark Swanson. Thank you for coming. All right. We appreciate it, and we hope y'all come on back.
Good afternoon. I have the pleasure to introduce two new members to the club today. So could I have Chris Nordmeyer and Betty, is it Weist? Join me up here, please. I had every intention to call both of these lovely new members last week, and I did not get a chance. So thankfully, Michelle collected a little bit of information. So I'll start with Chris. So Chris is sponsored by Bob Holman, and he is a commercial architect for a regional architectural firm. He has been married for 19 years with one adult child and two grandchildren, a 5-year-old grandson and a 3-year-old granddaughter. So you've been in Greenville for about 20 years, right? And you moved from Louisville, Kentucky, where you still have some family members, right? Well, welcome to the club. Here is your. Once I introduce both of you, we'll have a picture with Ian. And then we have Betty Weiss. Thank you. So Betty is sponsored by Jane Dyer. Thank you, Jane, wherever you are. Saw you earlier. There you are. So you've been in Rotary for over 25 years, a past president, and recently moved from Ridgewood, New Jersey, and was a member of a club there. And she is retired, currently living at the Cliffs Valley. So welcome and thank you. Here is. Could you join me all in welcoming Chris and Betty?
First, I want to thank Jimmy's father, for joining us today. It's hard to believe it's been over a year since I was honored to introduce our 2020. Can y'all hear me? Oh, better? Okay. Did you hear me thank Jimmy for coming? Okay. It's been over a year since I was able to introduce our 2020 Service Above Self Scholar, Jamise Bonaparte. Before she tells us about her freshman year at the Honors College at the College of Charleston, I wanted to remind you that she came to us with a 4.0 GPA from Greenville Senior High, excellent SAT scores, and glowing references. And I would like to again share a quote from her application essay to give you some insight into this wonderful young woman. She said, "Community service should never feel like an obligation. Making a difference in my community and in the world is refreshing, eye-opening, and rewarding. In order for society to thrive as a whole, we have to possess the willingness to uplift, encourage, and lend a helping hand. I have been blessed to continue to get to know her this last year, and I am sure you will enjoy hearing from her today. Please join me in welcoming Jamise, our 2020 Service Above Self Scholar."
Good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to say thank you again for choosing me as the 2020 recipient of the scholarship and allowing me to be here with you all today. So as Lisa mentioned, I am Jamise Bonaparte, and I am a rising sophomore at the Honors College at the College of Charleston, and I went in as a biology major and neuroscience minor. During my second semester, I switched my minor from neuroscience to medical humanities. It was a way to better diversify my education instead of solely focusing on biological and neurological processes. I wasn't sure what to expect when I went into my first year of college, especially during the pandemic. So my first 3 weeks of college were virtual at home. So they delayed our move-in date for 3 weeks. And when we were able to move on campus, there were very, very strict protocols. So these protocols kind of limited our interaction with other students, and it just stripped away normal forms of communication and meeting new people, which is very, very crucial as a entering freshman, I feel like. And also when we were able to move on campus, many of our classes were virtual. So we were in our dorms a lot, and that was just very hard for everyone, I feel like. And the classes that were in person, we had to wear masks, we were socially distanced, and it was just half the class at a time. So it was hard to interact with our classmates, get to know them, and even recognize their faces. So it was just a very tough process getting into the new way of life and college in general. Fortunately for myself, I went in knowing my suite mate. We were very close friends, so that was a very good thing for me. And I was also a part of an honors cohort, entrepreneurship cohort, where we lived together on the first and second floor of our dorm. So I was able to make very good friends through that program and community. So when I first started volunteering in Charleston, I was getting involved with random different things, just trying to meet the like hour requirement I was given. And it was just a tough process due to COVID. But I realized during that time that I wasn't enjoying the things I was committing my time to necessarily, and just trying to get an hour and two here and there. So I feel like community service is based on enjoying it, having a passion for it, and just really loving helping others. And I value making those connections with other people and just helping them during difficult times in their lives. So I switched kind of the pattern where I was just minding random things and really started doing research of what I could get involved in that would make me happy and feel like it was very rewarding to me. So I started off with the Loaning Foundation, which is an organization similar to the Ronald McDonald House, but it's the children who are kind of more affected by their parent and caregivers' cancer diagnosis rather than the children being ill themselves. So I was able to be a helping hand to them, be a shoulder for them to lean on and talk to, and really get to know the children and what they're experiencing. It was kind of hard because it was virtual, so we were all online during this time to make sure we wasn't spreading any germs to them to bring back to their families. But I was able to better connect because I too have experienced certain circumstances. When I was younger, I had a brother who battled cancer. So going along that journey with him, I was able to better connect with the children. I also volunteered at Harvest Hope when I came home from winter break, which was a very, very humbling experience. So COVID-19 has been a tough pandemic for everyone, but it hit some harder than others. So when the families or individuals would come through the line, they shared heartbreaking stories and just telling like how COVID has impacted them. So being able to help them by what all we could give, it was just very humbling and just it was just nice to see a smile on their faces and their gratitude as we help them make ends meet to the best as possible. And so I got to connect with them, hear their stories, and also connect with the volunteers. So it was just a very rewarding process and an organization to be a part of. So I'm thankful I got involved with that and still involved today. And I also tutored while I was in college. So I believe education is very, very important no matter what path of life you take. So whether you go to higher education or the workforce, you always need education no matter what. And so I try to tutor as much as possible if I'm able to and help others better understand any information if I'm able to do so and educate it myself. And growing up, I had a wonderful tutor and mentor who always made sure I understood the depth of the information and just not how to regurgitate it for a test. So I feel like that's just a very important aspect no matter what class you're taking. And so I tutor in calculus and chemistry, which is two of my strong suits. And at home, I tutored and still tutor elementary and middle school math and English. So that's what I'm currently doing now. And so um, as my next steps in life, so this summer I took 2 summer classes. I finished up my humanities requirement and math requirements. And I'm currently taking statistics right now. I will finish that up next week when I take my final exam. And I also participated in MEDX Tier 2 this summer. So MEDX is a 4-year summer program, and there's 4 tiers if you would like to participate in all 4 tiers. And you start off the summer before your 12th grade year in high school. So I did that the summer before then, and then I did it this year. And it's just a program to help students get involved in the medical field. They help you prepare for medical school. So you can do MCAT prep, interview prep, you get clinical and observational hours with physicians, and it's just a loving community and great support system. So this summer I had the opportunity to shadow a wide range of physicians. So I did internal medicine and family medicine. I got to see surgeries. I shadowed pediatrics, wound care, and just a very, very broad spectrum. And for the remainder of my summer, I chose to pick up more clinical experience. So I will be shadowing neurology and neurosurgery just to get a feel of kind of what my future career path may look like. So that's what I'll be doing until I go off to school, which will be in September for me. Um, And as far as my next steps in life, I will be studying abroad at the University of Sussex in Brighton, England next semester. So I'm very, very excited about that. I have had some, I guess, some path changes. So I decided to stay at the College of Charleston all 4 years. So I will be graduating in 2024 instead of graduating a year early in 2023. I just felt like it was the least stressful option, and I wouldn't have to take 17 to 18 credit hours each semester. I plan to study abroad again my senior year, and since my education is free, I just wanted to maximize my experience and get the best experience as an undergraduate student. And so after I graduate in 2024, I plan to take a gap year. I love to travel, so I would like to travel, just take on new experience in life and just do the things I love. And also I wouldn't have to rush into the medical school process, and it could just be an easygoing and just a mental break as well. And so after my gap year, I will be entering medical school and hopefully on my journey to becoming a pediatric neurosurgeon. Thank you.
Hey folks, my name's Sam. I'm the AmeriCorps member currently serving at the Greenville bus system. For those of you who don't know what AmeriCorps is, I just tell people it's like the Peace Corps, but it's domestic. And so we are a group of about 20 individuals here in the upstate who are partnered with various nonprofits and community organizations. And we seek to serve, invest in, and support our local community. And I picked Greenlink because I wanted to learn about Greenville's growing infrastructure needs, its growing transportation needs. As I think we've all seen Greenville catapult to new levels of economic prosperity. But with that, we have larger and greater transportation needs than ever before. And so I just wanted to give you a brief rundown. I'm going to be looking at my clock because I'm a bit of a talker. And I don't want to go over because we would be here all night if I did. So I wanted to give a brief rundown of Greenlink's future plans and what we might need for the future of Greenville. So back in 2018, a quick flashback, Greenlink wrote a plan of what they would do if they had more funding. And that plan included extended hours, getting hours all throughout Monday through Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, increased frequency, so how often the bus would stop by a bus stop, among other things. So the increased hours was probably our first priority, right? This is very important. Last year, we ran Monday through Friday, 5:30 to 7:30, which serves a large portion of our population, but it leaves out critically a lot of second shift workers, right? A lot of people rely on the bus system in order to get to their grocery store, their medical needs, but a lot of people use the bus to get to their place of employment. And so buses serve as a really critical, linchpin in order to get employees to their employers with scheduled regularly. And so, as I'm proud to say, as of this January, we have increased the hours from 5:30 to 11:30 Monday through Friday, but we're still working on the Saturday and Sunday service, right? We have Saturday service from 8:30 to 5 right now, and we have no Sunday service whatsoever. We don't run on Sundays. And as part of my role, I go out into the community and talk to bus riders and ask what they want. And you'd be surprised at how many people just want to go to church on Sundays. And currently, our big issue with that is two things, right? We don't have enough drivers. We need more drivers so that we can have Sunday service. But our big issue with that is that CDL licenses are really hard to get. And so Greenlink has created a CDL plan or training plan where you can come to Greenlink. We'll pay you to get your CDL. It's about $16 an hour, which is more than I make. And then after that program, you can stay on with Greenlink and serve as a driver there. And then our other big issue, and this issue this problem actually affects everything, which is why it's been the number one thing on Greenlink's radar is our new maintenance facility. As some of you may be aware, our new maintenance facility is going to be right by the Washington Heights neighborhood off of Arcadia Drive. And it solves a really big problem, which is that our old maintenance facility, we love it, but it does not serve us anymore. We've outgrown it big time. Right? It only has 2 bays for buses. We have a lot more than 2 buses. And this new planned maintenance facility will have 10 bays. It's going to be about 8 times as big, and it will allow us to expand as Greenville expands. And so that's about all of my time, but I just wanted to give y'all a quick shout out and a thank you from one volunteer to another. Thank you for all the great work that you do. It doesn't go unnoticed. You all are wonderful. Thank you.
So if you're looking at your agenda, obviously I am not Chris Manley. So Chris is ill, but part of our programs committee, which has done an awesome job in gathering periodically and identifying potential speakers, and then being willing to go out and to contact those individuals or panels to come join us. So it's my honor today to, in place of Chris, to recognize Scott Baier, who is our guest speaker. Scott is with Clemson University. He's the chair of the economics department. I'll let him do some of his own intro, but there were 2 things I wanted to note because his experience goes well beyond Clemson University. So in 2007, 2008, he served as a senior economist on the President's Council of Economic Advisors. And then more recently, he's also served as a consultant to the Congressional Budget Office and United States International Trade Commission. So we're really honored and privileged to have you with us, Scott. And then I will just say, I had to keep asking him at least 3 times. So his last name is spelled B-A-I-E-R, things, right? I kept saying Baier, Baier, Baier. He's like Baier, Baier, Baier. So I was like, okay, Baier. He's like Baier, Seller, Ramona. Okay, Baier. So with that, I'd like to welcome Scott Baier.
Okay. So again, I'm going to give a state of the economy talk. And I think what makes this is the first time I've given one, and what I'll refer to is the post-pandemic era. In the sense, I've always given state of the economy talks pre-pandemic, and I had a set of slides. And then during the pandemic, I think it was pretty easy to give a talk because I could describe what was going on in the economy. Coming out, I'm not sure what people want to hear, so I'm going to tell the story. I think I'm going to try to tell a story of what's currently going on and what I think is going to be happening going forward. So if you have any questions, I'll take questions at the end, but if you have a burning question while I'm talking, go ahead and ask it. I'm used to getting interrupted. I get interrupted all the time. So here's where I want to start. And what made the pandemic challenging for economists was normally economic data comes to economists like at best quarterly, sometimes weekly, but usually it's quarterly or yearly. But during the pandemic, the economy fell apart so quickly. If you can remember, around March 12th or 13th of 2020, we had an NBA game canceled, then the NCAA basketball tournament was canceled, and everything went into shutdown. And what we saw happen, and again, it shows up in the data, so we had to switch to looking at data that came in more daily. And so rather than looking at government released data, this is actually credit card data of people spending that we can tabulate on a daily basis. So you can kind of see the movements here. So this blue line represents what happened right around March 13th. National spending fell by about 31% by consumers. And if you kind of remember back to your econ, if it doesn't cause you too much of a shock, about 2/3 of GDP comes from consumer spending. So when this marble falls off the table, the whole economy kind of went down. If you look at what was happening in South Carolina, that's the red state, or the red line, or red state, sorry. Black line is Greenville County. What you see again is a similar fall, not as steep, but as we trace it back out, what I think is interesting is you see a pretty good recovery. So what we have here at the end represents spending right now in South Carolina is up about 22% compared to where it was back in January of 2020. So we're starting to see a little bit of a rebound on the consumer spending side. Where we don't see as big of a rebound, again, is going to be on the investment side. Why? Because investment still is surrounded by a lot of uncertainty. And so you're not getting the big push from additional plants, machines, and equipment. More traditional data. And again, what was interesting about this pandemic, at least from an economic side, is we see these tremendous drops and tremendous spikes that we didn't see in any other recession. So back in April, we saw unemployment shoot up to 14.8%, and that was quite a dramatic spike up, and then a spike down, and we're about 5.9%. So that's kind of a familiar figure that are numbers that we kind of see daily. Again, to kind of highlight again what was going on nationally with data that you may be familiar with. This is the weekly initial claims for unemployment insurance. Back when I was working during the Great Recession, and we thought that was bad, we had a spike up of, in 1 week, roughly 700,000 people filed for unemployment insurance. That was dwarfed last year, when in 1 week we had over 6 million people file for unemployment insurance. So again, a dramatic change in the economy. And we're still trying to regulate the labor market. So here is where we are. Here's that 6 million spike up. And then I've traced every week up until last week. This red line represents what goes on average. In normal times, we lose about 200,000 people file for unemployment insurance. And if you look at that, we're well above that. Even today, where we think it's a lot better than we were before, over 2 times as many people, 419,000 people applied for unemployment insurance last year. So while the economy in some dimensions, spending looks better, on other dimensions in terms of labor market churning, labor market turnover, it still hasn't regulated back to normal. What you may have heard people write about, and I'll kind of highlight this pretty quickly, is that the pandemic has impacted people differentially. So here is unemployment by income category, and you see low wage workers, income workers, they're down, employment's down about 22%. And for high income workers, we see they're up about 7%. And their fall wasn't as dramatic as those low income workers. And again, that makes some sense because the high wage earners were more able, more capable of working from home. And so they didn't lose their jobs as much as the low wage workers did. We see the same type of pattern in South Carolina and for Greenville County. This is a little bit noisier, as you would imagine. As you burrow down, it's going to be somewhat noisier. Another interesting one that I think to look at is this company called Homebase reports small business operations, what's been going on with small businesses. Again, you have the marble falling off the table here, and then kind of a bounce back. So let me tell you what each of these lines mean. This green line means businesses open relative to where they were back in January of 2020. The red line is employment, and the blue line is hours worked. And I think it interestingly, when you look at these data, that small businesses open are down about 25%. So nationally, that means about 1 in 4 small businesses haven't opened back up since the beginning of the pandemic. Whereas hours worked are down about 13%, and employees are down about 15%. Well, if you look at South Carolina, again, a similar picture, but it's a little bit better. Businesses, about 1 in 5 haven't opened back up. Hours are down by about 2% for those people working, and employment is down about 5%. So again, South Carolina, another indication that it's doing a little bit better than the national economy. If you look at spending by income category, again, I think this is interesting. So this is South Carolina, how we've been spending. It almost, it's not too surprising. Green line here is spending on groceries. So what is this right there? Yeah, that's the hoarding. Everybody running out and getting toilet paper, paper towels, right? But you notice, you can see Grocery spending is up about 10 or 15% all along. Places like food and accommodations really were struggling for a long period of time, and now they've kind of bounced back at the end. Retail is up now compared to where it was back in January by about 35%. So again, in some aspects of consumer spending, we're doing quite well. In other aspects, not as well as we would like. And again, thinking intuitively of what's going on, what was the pandemic? What was a disease that could easily spread when people gathered together? And so I'm going to trip over my shoelace. Sorry. All these areas here, like food and accommodations, arts and leisure, that require people to gather together, were going to be the areas in which we had spending drop the most. If you look at then what's happening to employment, as economists like to say, labor demand is derived demand. So if you have a drop in arts and entertainment or in leisure, you're going to have a drop in employment in those categories. And you can see, generally speaking, in South Carolina, in these categories, employment kind of followed what was happening spending-wise. If you look at businesses opening, I'll kind of skip that one. But again, we go back to where are we in terms of business opening? About 1 in 4 food and drink establishments are not open. And again, if you go to the food and drink establishments, currently you can still see they're struggling to stay open in terms of finding an employment. And I'll say more about that later. Again, this is hours worked by income group. And now I'm going to spend a slide or two kind of trying to explain what happened during what caused kind of the turnaround. We kind of reached a nadir in spending right around when the stimulus checks came out. So that was one thing that boosted kind of the economic recovery. Really two things that the government did back in last April. They did the stimulus checks, then the additional unemployment benefits. Both of those things, I think, kind of supported or helped support the turnaround of the economy. Out here is when those stimulus checks began to wear out. But again, one of the things I want to highlight is as soon as these checks went out, you kind of saw a bounce back in spending, in hours worked. But that wasn't all that was going on. It wasn't all government that was driving the turnaround. Another important thing that was happening that was driving the economic turnaround, of course, was the health concerns were being addressed. So this graph may be a little bit difficult to read, but the blue line represents spending and the red line represents new cases of COVID-19. And what you can kind of clearly see, as the COVID-19 cases jumped up, spending dropped. But then you go back and remember what happened at the end of middle of April through May. Those cases started to fall, and then people began to feel more comfortable about going back out again. So again, this turnaround in spending wasn't all driven by government policy. It was driven partly by addressing some of the healthcare issues. So then you see spending tick up, but then again, we got till June of last year when, especially in South Carolina and some of the other southern states, cases started to rise again. And as the cases started to rise again, people started to stay at home and spend less. So when we're talking about a recovery, there were two things that were going on. Part of it was led by the government, but a big part of it was how was the whole overall health situation, COVID situation being addressed, and were the case numbers falling? And so if we're going to look forward a little bit and think about case numbers as the Delta cases start to rise again, I think there's general concern about what impact that's going to have on overall economic spending again. So let me talk about a couple of the government programs quickly. So the most recent one that passed was the American Recovery Plan. This had about $2 trillion in outlays. And then here's my estimated impact. The estimated impact on overall economic activity is going to be about $500 billion, because a lot of these things aren't designed to help stimulate the economy. They're more or less designed to help the trains run on time. Having funding to get the schools back reopened. That's going to be good, but it's not going to have an economic stimulus. The one thing that was kind of surprising that we've seen, and it's kind of bear out in the data, is the most recent rounds of stimulus checks. Most people haven't run out and spent those yet. What they've been primarily using those for are to pay down current debts or deficits that they have. So again, that's not all that stimulative. And so the bang for the buck is much less than what we thought. Similar with the increase in the extended unemployment benefits. Most people are either paying down bills or socking that away, saving it for when those stimulus checks run out. So again, while this is a big spending bill, the economic impact, I think, will be rather small if you consider $500 billion small. So one thing that often comes up anytime I give a talk about government spending is, well, what does this do to the debt or the deficit? If you look at the fiscal deficit in 2020, you can see the government brought in roughly $3.5 trillion, spent over $6.5 trillion, and for a budget deficit of a measly $3.1 trillion. So again, it was a huge deficit, roughly 25% of GDP, and this year's deficit, including the American Recovery Plan, is expected to be much larger, to be even larger than last year's deficit. But even so, again, when people are concerned about the deficit, even when the spending on the pandemic goes away, if it all goes away, notice the path of the deficits going on. They still are expected to be roughly $2 trillion a year by 2031, which means the problem with government spending isn't so much addressing the pandemic. Oh, my time's up. Isn't so much addressing the pandemic, but the long run planned programs of the government. Within the American Recovery Plan, there are certain aspects that the government wants to make permanent, or certain people in the government want to make permanent. One of those being the additional child tax care credit. If those things are made permanent, that will again have a much larger effect on the long run path of the debt and deficit in the U.S. economy. Again, kind of highlight this, I'll do it quickly. This shows the same budget in 2018. Even in good times, the government was running a large budget deficit of roughly $750 billion. So one of the last things I want to talk about, and then I'll have a concluding slide. Again, the other topic that always comes up is what's happening with inflation. So again, you go back, and this is U.S. history, you go back to 1980. At one point, we had 13.6% inflation, 5.7 in 91. That's when Greenspan said we got to pull it back. And now we currently have 4.5% inflation. So, you know, what is going to happen with inflation? There are two schools of thought, even within economics. One group thinks that these are largely just one-off supply side effects, that those things will go away in a year or two. There's another school of thought, especially the economists who grew up in this time period, that think the inflation is going to be more permanent, longer lasting. I have a tendency to fall into, I think the inflation will be more permanent, more longer lasting. Why? Because the amount of stimulus the Federal Reserve has put in the economy, the amount of stimulus that the US government has put into the economy, it's going to be hard to pull that back. We didn't get the inflation coming out of the Great Recession. Why? One of the reasons why was because the financial sector wasn't in very good shape. So they just sat on those cash reserves that they were holding when the Fed injected them in. Coming out of the pandemic, the financial system is a lot better shape. Going in and coming out, they're in a lot better shape. So if they're not going to just sit on these idle cash reserves, they're more likely to lend them out, which will lead to inflation. And then kind of my last response on the supply side issue is that if you go back and read what people said back in the 1970s, they referred to all of these the inflation that was caused in the 70s by supply side issues as well. But we're always going to think there's supply side issues. When there's a big increase in demand, right, who's going to run out? Your instant reaction as a supplier isn't to jack up prices right away. So again, you get a big boost in demand, you get stocked out, then you just say, well, we're out. Then it gets written up in the newspaper saying, well, it's just a supply chain or supply disruptions. But eventually what ends up happening is that those suppliers start to raise prices. And I think that's where we're heading now. So again, I put about a 70% chance that inflation will be above 4.5% for the next 2 years. And I always give me enough cushion by saying a 30% chance I could be completely wrong. So, so what's holding us back? Again, the big thing that I think is holding us back is, have we fully addressed the health issues associated with COVID-19? The economy is really not going to come back. Not to say that we have to drive the number of cases to zero, but again, are we going to drive them to the case where people feel comfortable going out and living a normal life? On the supply side, as you guys are probably aware, there are lots of supply side issues. One is the generosity of the additional unemployment benefits. Certainly that is keeping some individuals from coming back to work. When I did a comparison of Alabama and South Carolina, some workers were making about $50,000 a year by just staying home compared to the $25,000 they would have by taking another job. Another issue that's causing some of the labor supply issues are working parents have to stay home with their children. They don't have anybody to watch them, so that's putting up some resistance on the supply side. Again, apprehension regarding health concerns. There are jobs that people may no longer want to take because of the health concerns. And again, changes in workers' preferences. I try to meet every week with people in Greenville just about what's going on in the area, business leaders in Greenville, or who I think are business leaders. Sorry if I haven't met any of you yet, But you know, one of the responses I get is, it's easier to hire quote unquote white collar workers if they get to be able to stay at home and work from home on occasion. And it's harder to get people to come in to the office, or if you work in a factory, to get them to come in and work on the floor. So again, changes in worker preference of where they want to work. And again, the last thing is, again, going back to the health issues, there's still a lot of uncertainty surrounding the whole state of the economy and health coming out until those things are addressed. I think going forward, we'll probably have 5% GDP growth. Unemployment will continue to go down, but we won't see a robust recovery until those things are addressed. So I apologize for going over.
How do we take into consideration the fact that this is not a financial, this is a health issue? And we're comparing it to the past where we had all financials. I keep hearing economists like scratch their head going, we don't really know where to get this information from.
No, I think that's exactly right. And I think some of the responses that economists and policymakers have taken is addressing it like it was a financial crisis, or addressing it like it was any other recession. But it's much different, right? I think the primary thing that needed to be addressed was the health aspect. And then the second is the economic side. I really think, I worked in the White House back during the Great Recession. And as much as we dislike politicians, the one thing I'll give last year credit for was they quickly addressed much of the healthcare concerns with the Family Act in 2020. They addressed the health side and then some of the economic side. But again, it is a much different, you can't apply the same response to a health shock as you would to a normal economic shock. And in fact, I'm sorry for giving a longer answer than I should. I didn't like the idea of calling these stimulus checks, because that's when we say stimulus checks, it brings up the connotation of, we want people to run out and spend. That's like the last thing we want to do. we wanted to provide people income support or some type of social insurance so that they could pay their bills and bridge a gap between when the economy gets better. But we kept calling it stimulus, like we wanted people to run out, even though everything was kind of, in lockdown.
I hear people saying, "Oh, the new administration is responsible for the gas prices going up," and there's so many factors. I'm curious what your thoughts are.
So I think it's both supply and demand. Big shocker there. One thing is I do think, the markets are forward looking. So realizing that in the US that we're going to do less oil exploration, that was going to lead people to believe the supply would be lower and that would boost prices. Also, just as importantly, look, when the economy is open back up, people were dying to go out and drive, drive places again. And that increase in demand, I also think is a big factor in driving up. I would say it's about 70-30 in terms of demand leading to the rise in price and about 30% on the supply side. I remember back when we went into the shutdown, again, telling stories that you may not care about. I remember when we went into shutdown, I was driving around my car and I would see gas 185 and I'm like, oh, I should fill up. And I'm like, I haven't gone anywhere. I still got a full tank. I mean, I can't fill up. But again, I think it's demand and supply, mostly demand. There's a lot of pent up demand out there. And I think that's what's causing the rise in prices and some of the other kind of necessity commodity things. I think it'll also push up inflation as well. I think it'll push up inflation. It may stimulate growth. And again, it all depends on execution and where the state of the economy is. There's a good chance that by the time it gets passed, the economy will be close to full employment, close to a full recovery, and that pushes us on the other side of higher inflation. If again, we fall back to a point where we're slowed down because of maybe the Delta virus, it will have less inflationary effects. And I'm getting the mic taken.
Well, wait, don't hand it over. The last final question. So Bob Howard over there has been patiently waiting. If you want to shout it out.
Oh, at some point it will, right? But the hard part about the U.S. economy is because the dollar is used as a national currency, we don't know where that tipping point is. But clearly within our lifetime, I hope in our lifetime, well, I hope the bad thing doesn't happen, but I hope we all live with the way the debt is accumulating. I'll try to back out of this. The way the debt is going now, we get to 2030, by 2050, it'll be roughly, if we go as forecasted, it'll be roughly twice the size of GDP. And that's almost unsustainable, right? So at some point, and where all the spending, what's driving the deficit is not, it really comes from two programs. It's Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. Those are the long run drivers. And how do you fix that? Because those are programs that we've made promises to. And it's not as easy as say, well, let's just tax the rich. Because if you look at the long history of US with marginal income taxes, they varied quite a bit, but the tax revenue that comes from those wide variations doesn't vary that much. So if we want to fund those programs and keep our promises, then we're really, to make them sustainable, we're going to have to dial those back and then increase taxes broadly on everybody. But you're right, once we get over 150% or 200% of GDP, it's going to become potentially a real problem.
So one round of applause for Scott. Thank you. Totally on the joking side. I was like, I wonder if one has a step counter. Like, all right, wait. But we have a really strong relationship. This is more acknowledgement with Alexander Elementary. This started during Jane's presidency, a great initiative, which is every time we have a guest speaker, we make a donation of a book to Alexander's library. This one is Los Gatos versus Los Perros, and signed it already, and it'll be delivered to them courtesy of you. So thank you. Okay, so I'm going to make some closing remarks, but I wanted to start off with, if I heard, this is a cue. Wait, is that a jingle or a Kringle? My gosh, Teresa, it must be Kringle related. Did you love that?
That was so cute. Now, I got this hat that Amy was supposed to wear, so I'm going to put that up here so next time Amy can wear it. She's my little elf. Hey, guys, I'm Teresa Miller, and I'm here to get you guys excited. It's time to get excited. It's time to get with your friends. It's time to roll up your sleeves and get to work because the Kringle Holiday Village is coming December 10th, 11th, and 12th. Yay! Okay. So we need every one of you to come out and help us because our goal is to make this the biggest, the best, brightest holiday extravaganza Greenville, South Carolina has ever seen. Now we are big. Our club is big. We are the biggest club in South Carolina. And when I say this event is going to be big, I mean huge big. We are anticipating 15 to 30,000 people to come through the gates at Fluor Field on December 11th and 12th. Now, number one, as a Rotary, that's, oh my God, amazing opportunity to put who we are out into the community. The Drive and West End Events has partnered with us because they want their name to be highlighted. They want to help us make this gigantic, and it's an opportunity you don't want to miss. So we need you guys to help. And the way we're going to do that, where's my little clicker? Where is the clicker? Okay. Well, first, let me back up to the event. So the event is December 10th, 11th, and 12th. There's a special VIP event that will happen Friday night for our sponsors. Now, this is a huge event. We need sponsors and we need a presenting sponsor. Presenting sponsor is going to cost you $20,000, but if you think of the amount of exposure you're going to get, 15 to 30,000 people coming to this event and seeing you connected with Rotary and West End Events in the Drive, it's an amazing, amazing opportunity. So I want you to kind of picture with me what this is going to be. So Main Street on December 11th, you are going to walk up to the gates. You are going to see Christmas lights. You're going to hear Christmas music. You're going to walk into the gates at Fluor Field. You're going to see a giant snow globe. You're going to smell cinnamon and all kinds of wonderful baked, wonderful holiday treats. You're going to walk through the Kringle Holiday Market where you're going to see artisans. Still, Christmas lights everywhere, Christmas music, carolers. You're going to continue on to the Village Market, or after the Village Market, you're going into the Village Square where you're going to have jugglers and entertainment, and then the Village Beer Garden where you're going to have glühwein and beer and entertainment, and you can get on to the Kringle Village Express, and you can go to Kringle Village, Kringle Wonderland. What is the name of it, Jane? Kinder Lane, the Kinder Lane Express is going to be a train that goes around the Drive Stadium. There's going to be bounce houses, and the final stop is going to be Santa's house at home plate. And we are working to make that just the most amazing thing you've ever seen. So you don't want to miss this. So what I need is, and I'm going to say the name, and if you could stand up, because we need people to help on committees. Roger and Jordan are our planning committee. Stand up. Now they're doing such a fantastic job. We're going to help them throughout the rest of the committee. So Jane, if you could stand up, she's over decor and lights. If you want to help with decor and lights, you need to talk to Jane. We need someone to run our auction. This could be you. So contact us if you want to do that. Heather Hayes is over VIP in the Beer Garden. Christine Braswell Amin is with Santaland. Josh Fowler at Polar Express. Lorraine Holman with the vendors. Me, PR. Jimmy Kimball, Raffle. Lauren Scroggins, Santaland. Mike Sarvis, sponsors. Brett Caldwell, stage management. So if you're here, stand up. You need to contact one of them so you can get involved. We need every one of you guys to be a part of this because this is going to be something Greenville will never forget, and we want this to be here for the next 20 years or longer. So I expect all of you guys to help. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. So with that, I'm going to make just a couple other closing remarks, and then we'll do our four-way test. So Cart, Remember those donations on the table? And at the last meeting, if you remember, Ryan Thacker was so, right? I will cut my hair if we raise so much money. Well, I will let you know so it's a man bun, right? He's wearing a man bun, very long wavy hair. After the meeting, he actually had people come up to him and say, I will pay you not to cut your hair. And it wasn't all females. There was actually a man who gave him $10 toward cart to not cut his hair. So anyway, so Ryan then goes home and he's like, oh my gosh, maybe we could make this cut my hair, don't cut my hair. And he's talking to his wife and his wife goes, what were you thinking? Of course you can't cut your hair, right? So he has to send me this email. It goes, so Ramona, I got home and spoke to my wife. I don't think I can cut my hair. So I told him, it's okay, we'll come up with something later. But still, please generously give to CART. But I did want to give you the Ryan update. Our meetings, if you've seen the announcement in our newsletter, we're going to be shifting. So we're going to be starting at 12:05. Get closer on track with lunchtime meetings. So we'll be wrapped up closer to 1 and allow for either networking afterwards or before the meeting. So if you want to network before, come closer like quarter to noon, but 12:05, boom, the gong's on and we're off to the races. So keep that in mind. We're also going to return to buffet style lunches, but they will be served by Weston servers, but we'll have the buffet style. All this starts with our August meeting. Keep that in mind. The other thing we started is a drawing at the end of each month for those club members who have brought potential members to our club. So this will be our first drawing. And this is a $25 Amazon gift card. So Rob, can you come draw a name for me? Just because you're looking at me. Just reach in there. Rance. I know, right? Yes, good things are happening. So this is all very good. And then I'll just first thank everybody. Then we have one little special thing. But Jamaica, you are amazing. And at our table, when you got done, someone said, oh my gosh, her dad must be so proud of her, right? And I was happy to hear your passion for community service, but also your acknowledgement of mental health and giving yourself time, right? So, but you are doing amazing things. To our guests who came, please come back. If you're interested in potentially being a Rotarian, check out Discover Rotary. It's a very accessible club and good membership. And then Sam appreciated the update on GreenLink and glad you guys are thinking about how to serve those workers who are beyond the 5 o'clock hour. So all good stuff. And then finally, Scott, I guess I appreciated the uncertainty for which you presented us, right? We do have a lot of uncertainty, but all good things. So with that, my final thing is to just say, if Jimmy Kimball, Teresa Miller, Lisa Minnick, who've left, Teresa, you're still here? Jimmy, where are you? So we celebrate August. Jimmy, you could stand up for a minute so everybody can see who you are. You know what I'm going to say. So we have August birthdays, but it happens that these 3 people actually celebrate their birthdays today. I don't have the Rotary Glee Club present. I thought if I did like a 1, 2, 3, then we could give a happy birthday shout out to them. I hope we have that in us. So 1, 2, 3, happy birthday. So thank you for that. For our guests who are not familiar, the agenda is on the table and we have a 4-way test there. If everybody could stand, recite that, and then we'll close our meeting. And maybe finally to our AV team, thank you. You guys are doing amazing and appreciate your time and dedication. So with that, our 4-way test. Of the things we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? And with that, we are adjourned.